Hello, Web Summit Qatar. Last day. Is everyone excited to talk about AI and energy? Let's get some energy. Come on. All right. So we all know how expensive in terms of energy usage AI training and AI inference is. We've all seen the headlines. It frankly makes crypto look cheap, given the previous talk. AI is way more expensive. So that's what we're going to talk about today, AI and energy. And the experts to my right will tell you all about it. So speaking of the experts to my right, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about what your company does? Starting with you, Jack, and then Dan.
Oh, okay. I'm Jack Lau. I'm the president of the Qatar Science and Technology Park, which is under the Qatar Foundation. We are a physical location providing support for entrepreneurs and startups, and also mature companies to deploy their technologies and make the world better.
I'm Dan Jeavons. I'm the Vice President for Digital Innovation at Shell. And my role is all about developing new digital technologies for use within Shell, partnering both with exciting places like QSTP, but also working with startups and other major technology providers globally.
So I'm guessing each of your companies have internal projections about how much more energy we're going to require in the AI era. You don't have to share exact numbers with me or the audience, but give us a sense of how much more energy are we going to need if in a conservative world and in an outlandish world?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into projections because I think it's really hard. And I think it's really hard because there's so much uncertainty. And I think maybe just to be really specific about that, I think we were living in a world where OpenAI was the paradigm, very, very large language models developing vast scale computations on GPUs, thousands of GPUs being ordered specifically for large language model training. And then, of course, we have DeepSeek come along and show you can do it with a lot less GPUs, and as a result, challenging a lot of the previous paradigms around how this was going to be done. I think what's very clear, though, is that there is going to be a growing data center footprint. There's going to be large numbers of GPUs, and I think also, as a result, energy consumption is going to increase. What I also want to say, though, is that there's also uncertainty in how that's going to happen, and one of the things that we're looking at is how we can more efficiently reduce the energy associated with data centers, as well as making sure the energy that we put into them is greener. One example of some of the technologies that we're working on is using advanced cooling technology. Things like immersion fluids and also direct-to-chip cooling techniques will significantly reduce the energy required for some of these large-scale training jobs.
Well, I do want to take a stab at the question about how much energy you're using. Being an engineer myself, think about your own mobile phones. Everything you do actually involves AI. Even taking a photo uses AI. WhatsApp uses encryption AI. So I dare say that use your phone as an example, and you know how much energy you're consuming. As for the Qatar Science and Technology Park, our mandate, of course, is to enable entrepreneurs to make our lives better. But the question and why I'm so excited with partnering with Shell is because this is a problem statement that affects not just you and me, a future generation, our future generations. The rate we're using energy and not using it wisely, deploying it in the most productive way, is going to be boomerang and hurting us. Then just mention an example about, cooling technology with one of their latest and greatest. Now think about this. Here it is. We have a chance to enable the young and able minds to play with the latest technologies, with data set, problem statement, hopefully a little bit of help from Qatar Science and Technology Park, that will change our lives. That will reduce, I talked to Dan offline, reduce the server's power consumption by 40%. You think about it, 40%, and you say, wow.
Yeah.
Right? So you look out sometimes, not just here, but many, many places around the world, the air pollution. Why is there pollution? Why is it that there's traffic jam? Why am I spending so much time? So all this boils down to whether or not, very quickly, some bright minds, hopefully in Qatar, will figure out a solution for us.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm curious, could you talk a little bit more about how AI can help? So we know it's going to use more energy. We know that it'll cost a lot more, therefore. But on the flip side, to your points, it can also help with operational efficiencies. Could you go a little bit into detail around how applying AI, even though it might high upfront costs, on the flip side, how could it actually maybe lower costs a little bit?
For sure. And this is my favorite topic, so you're going to have to watch that I don't go over time on this one. But let me talk a little bit about how AI can, I think, have a significant impact in reducing the emissions associated with energy. And I think the first thing to say is that it can make existing assets more efficient. What do I mean by assets? These are things like refineries and LNG plants and other things that are, if you like, the foundation of the energy system today. Now, those things, they operate at certain levels. They're typically set by engineering limits. There's opportunity to optimize the performance of those things, typically to drive more production and less CO2 simultaneously. So more value from the plant, less emissions for the planet. And I think those are great examples. And we've seen tangible examples where we've done that to our own facilities and seen some very significant CO2 reductions as a result of that. So that's the first one. The second one is equally exciting, which is the ability of AI to design new processes and new molecules. And we see that happening, whether that be in the way we're developing fuels and lubricants today within Shell, or in the way that we're, for example, designing new gas processing plants. Those things can be much more efficient using AI to design them, and also lower carbon designs can be brought forward because AI can do it much more quickly. The third one is around optimizing the energy system. I think we all know that the energy system is going to be more complex, more distributed, more diverse. And in that world, we're going to need to optimize across a variety of different data sources. And that's something that AI is extremely good at. And finally, and I think equally importantly, AI is really good at measuring things, or helping us to measure things. And things like methane emissions, for example, is a key area. Methane, of course, a very potent greenhouse gas. There's an enormous opportunity to use AI to identify very small-scale emissions and to prevent them, and that in turn has a significant impact. So loads of examples of how AI can have a real impact on the energy sector and reduce emissions.
Well, you used up all my time, but just kidding. So I want to explain it differently. So there's the creation of stuff with AI, right? So the impression is that that consumes a lot of energy. But there's also, what does that creation do for you in the long run? Autonomous vehicle. Yes, it does take energy to train the autonomous vehicle. But once you train it, use it daily, annually, decades-wise, the carbon footprint reduction is enormous. You can calculate it. And I dare say that what Dan and I are working on, hopefully, is even in the creation by AI, for instance, we just talked about liquid cooling, I mean, the cooling technology reduces the energy. So the algorithm is the same. But do we need such a big machine? Now, I don't want to go into technical details, but there are many new techniques, including some from Asia, some from America, and elsewhere. And so this is really exciting, problem set. And more interestingly, what Dan and I are doing is to enable, talents from all over the world. I noticed that the Dutch ambassador, Ferdinand, is sitting here. People don't necessarily have to be in Qatar. We work with everybody around the world to enable them to participate in these really exciting technologies.
That's fair. Okay, so I'm hearing potential operational efficiencies, potentially carbon reduction or emission reduction. What are the hurdles that you guys are seeing to AI tool adoption in the energy space? Like, what's stopping this from being rolled out faster?
Well, and I think Jack started talking about it. For me, what's really interesting is that I would argue that although it's not a silver bullet, AI is one of the most important technologies for the energy industry to focus on right now. But I think, if I can say, it's not necessarily the most attractive area for startups to want to work in. And we see that a lot. We see that there is actually not a lot of interest from the broader technology community in getting involved in these problems. And often that's a number of different reasons. It's because culturally it's not easy to access, it's complicated, it involves heavy engineering, large-scale assets, and so it's not the most accessible industry to get into. And I think that's what we together are trying to change. We think it's imperative that we bring the brightest minds, the creative force of the collective, to work on these problems. And we really believe that by doing that, that will be a catalyst for change, because oftentimes change comes from the exchange of different ideas, looking at the world in different ways. But I think it's going to require a bridging approach. So how can we bring together the energy industry, which also, to be frank, hasn't always been the most welcoming to new and innovative ideas, as well as also finding ways to make it more accessible, working with partners like QSTP.
Yeah, so I think the problem with AI is that actually the math, after a while, is easily understood. Reinforcement learning, the transformer technology. Once you study it, you can understand it. But then the problem, voila, where's the data? What is the problem statement? The same algorithm can be used for photo editing, but can also be used in efficient mining. Depends on what you use it for. Of course, there's some tweaking. So what Dan and I are working on, finally get to this stage, is that we have very useful data. AI is all about efficient use of smart data on problem set that's impactful. So you hear me use a few words, impactful and usefulness of data. And I dare say that this is the first time in Qatar, at least I know of, that we already have a problem statement with the data set and say, if you do it, that's a treasure out there.
Yeah.
And everybody will give you an applause. So what we're doing is actually creating this environment for people to play with.
I'd actually want to talk a little bit more about how you two are working together. But before we get there, on the flip side, AI, there's a lot of concern around job displacement across various industries, right? You've all seen the headlines. Curious, what are you guys seeing around the potential for AI displacing jobs in energy?
I think it's a really difficult question, and I think I hate dodging questions. I normally don't, but it's one of those things that the answer is we really don't know. And I think the reason I say that is that what I see in practice, and this comes back to some of the points that Jack was making, a lot of the AI use cases in the energy sector are both now, but also not yet. And what I mean by that is we see really good productivity gains in the use cases that we're deploying. That might be 10, 15% type productivity gains. But it's not yet capable of taking out, and replacing jobs completely. Oftentimes, almost always, it's human-in-the-loop supervised learning that we're seeing, where the AI is becoming a partner with the human. And that's our preferred mode anyway. And I think that's particularly true in energy, largely because we operate highly complex processes with lots of risk associated with those. Having human supervision is an essential part of what we do every day. And so making sure that we adopt and embed AI into that in a safe, secure, reliable, ethical manner, that's been our focus so far, and making sure we do it in the right way. I think it's going to be bumpy is probably the best way to describe it, this next wave, because we're going from, if you like, the laboratory into the real world. And as you do that, there's a lot of learning that needs to go on. And I'm excited, I'm positive. I also think there's lots of opportunities for people to get involved in the AI industry, and particularly the AI energy industry. But I think it's going to be a period of change and disruption over the next period of time.
I couldn't agree more. I started my career in engineering many, many decades ago. I remember when I first entered engineering, there's also a debate. If you do this, will it replace jobs? But then my professor told me a few things. He said, Jack, I want to teach you something. Whatever you do, human beings want more. Whatever you have done, your kids are going to say, can I have more? Now you have a smartphone. You say, well, the smartphone is pretty good. I bet you next year you say, can I do this? Can I do this virtual reality and all that? But not to digress too much, because AI is to serve human beings. And I believe that AI enable you to work more efficiently. I'll give you an example. For instance, customer service. Right? There's a human being answering call. You're very happy that someone answered a call, but when you have AI providing customer support to the customer service person, he or she is expected to handle even more calls more efficiently and with less error. And I bet you that will make our lives better. because the demand is rising. AI is just enabling us to live a better life and more efficiently, more data, and satisfy our, unfortunately, human beings' insatiable needs. So I'm a perpetual optimist. Don't worry, guys. And I hate to tell you this, because of AI, the drugs are going to make us live a lot longer. So think, please, you have to work.
Okay, AI also requires a pretty high initial investment and, frankly, ongoing investment. Could you talk a little bit about the orders of magnitude that your companies are deploying and how you're thinking in terms of ROI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always best to talk in examples. I mean, we're, I think, north of 100 use cases in production today across Shell. We're seeing very, very significant benefits from the deployment. I will say when I talk about AI, I'm talking about not just generative AI, which tends to be what everyone conflates with AI these days, but also more conventional machine learning models.
Exactly.
We've rolled out use cases in asset optimization, I mentioned that, but also things like reliability, predicting failure on pieces of equipment. To do that use case, we aggregated north of 9 trillion rows of data. We've got it running now on more than, I think, 19,000 pieces of equipment, predicting failures right across our business globally. So these are examples of where a lot of the AI use cases that we've developed and deployed have reached true enterprise scale and are now deeply embedded into the way that we do business every single day. I will also say that generative AI is perhaps at a much earlier stage. So we have several tens of use cases where we're deploying this right now, things from supporting us with tender writing through to helping to create brand-compliant imagery and everything in between. So we have a lot of examples where we're using it, but I will also say it's early days, and there's a lot more to come in that space.
Well, I want to answer that question in another way. I think there are a lot of smart people. Yesterday, one of the AI company, generative AI company, just raised another $3.9 billion US. Let's assume that the investors are intelligent and not run by dumb machines. That tells you that whatever we're spending on investments, not only are there people who are willing to foot the bill, of course they're expecting to have tremendous gain. We are already benefiting from AI. I want to go back to your earlier questions. When virtual conferencing first came, people say, well, very soon there won't be a need for physical web summit. Everybody can be at home, right? And there are virtuals of that, right? But look at the website, look at the people around us. The benefit of human-to-human interaction, despite what virtual meeting should probably bring as a convenience. So I'm not too worried about the investment. Of course, you can talk about billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. One thing about AI is that the return of investment is much quicker.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, of course, you have to still pour in more, so it's like a treadmill. But that's exactly what we want as human beings. Yeah. Without us demanding it, there will be such an investment or such a need.
Okay, now your favorite question. How are your companies working together?
Yeah, so it's been a great collaboration. We've been working together for many years, actually. Shell's been, if you like, an anchor tenant of the Qatar Science and Technology Park. But more recently, and today, we're actually launching a new collaboration, which is called the Shell.ai Futures Pitch. And the concept here is to solve some of the problems that we've been talking about here. We want to bridge that gap between the energy industry and the startup ecosystem working with QSTP. And we think that by putting out a set of problem statements, helping startups understand the sorts of things that we want AI to do within the energy sector, as well as also finding ways of coaching and mentoring startups through a process towards a final pitch in which they can potentially win a paid proof of concept with Shell, as well as also cash prizes. And those are opportunities for startups to really get to grips with what it means to do AI in the energy sector, and also some of the opportunities where the technology can have a really meaningful impact in the near term.
So Dan said it all. Well-defined problem statement, well-defined structure, data set, impactful research and development, recognition. So what else can be better? Fame and glory and fun at the same time. And your investments for most startups are just a simple notebook with internet connections, right? I can't think of a better way to be excited.
And I understand there's you guys have a video you wanted to share?
Yeah,
We
let's
get the
roll the
video
video.
playing. Kind of wrap it all together. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your support. Thanks for coming here.
Just a final question. Hey, let's say there's someone in the audience working in the energy space. They see what's happening. They think maybe we're in the AI era now. Any final advice for them?
So I would say get involved, but get involved in really what it means. I think there's a lot of superficial engagement, lots of people looking at high-level problem statements. I think energy is complex, it's difficult. It's a large ecosystem. It requires deep understanding, and I would encourage them to reach out and to find ways of working with energy companies, finding partners like QSTP that can help them get involved, and work really closely with the problem statement. I think AI is only as useful as the problems that it solves, and the closer you are to the real problems that the business experience today in the energy sector, that's the key piece of advice I'd give.
Yeah, the energy sector definitely has problems.
Well, I'm going to borrow something that people have said because my AI told me that's easier. Just please be foolish and be hungry. AI is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.